All right. So this meeting is being conducted utilizing teleconferencing and electronic means consistent with state of California executive orders regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. Zoom is being utilized for this meeting. In case of technical issues, meetings will be uploaded to the city website as soon as possible after the meeting. We will be conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom. Committee members and staff are participating from remote locations, practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meetings by use of Zoom as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak to the Climate Action Committee may do so during public comment or may comment on agenda items during the discussion of each item and must be logged into Zoom. Anyone using abusive, vulgar, offensive, threatening, or harassing language, personal attacks of any kind, or offensive terms that target specific individuals or groups will be muted and removed from the meeting. Please do not abuse this new way to provide public comment. Oh, and look, more people are here. So we'll call the meeting to order, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Jay, for the roll call. Sorry, Jay, John Jay.
That's all right. All right, I will start with Kennelly.
I'm here.
Joshua Saman.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Hastings.
Here. Get that?
Burns.
Here.
Thank you. Lisa Pierce.
Here.
Do not see yet. Alex Goodman. I do not see either. Gerald Glazer. I do not see yet either.
Gary and Sunali are going to be a little late.
Okay, thank you. Ambrosia Thompson.
Present.
Sarah Gurney.
I'm here.
Thank you. And I don't see Diana Rich or Argus Brent. So I think that is it for the roll call.
And Everett Fernandez.
Oh, Everett Fernandez, I do not see either.
I apologize. I'm getting a call that's an emergency that I have to take. Can I hand this over to you, Joshua, for the next couple of minutes?
Sure, no trouble. Okay, our next bit in any case is review of action items. There was not a whole lot of that from the last meeting. First was that anybody who is listed for potentially terming out this year, which was myself, Woody, Alex, Jerry, and Argus, should consider whether they want to reapply, and also consider encouraging someone else to do so if they decide not to reapply. Next up was an action item for me to send an email to everybody about the intent on the work plan meeting. I did that once. I also sent an update on that just a few minutes ago, which I'm not expecting anybody to have read yet. It'll be discussed during today's meeting, mostly for folks who can't make it today. And finally, everyone was encouraged to send any input about reporting out to the City Council, to Kenna, prior to the City Council meeting, which was last week, and working groups encouraged to be reviewing the Climate Action Framework Appendix for potential items to prioritize. I think that will cover it for the action items. At this time, we are open to comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda, but I'm not seeing any extra members of the public at the moment. So I think we can move on from that. I just want to double check here if we have a quorum at this point. Yeah, I do, is my understanding. So at this time, are there any statements of conflict of interest from committee members regarding any items on today's agenda? No, good. You know, I'm really waiting for someday when somebody has a conflict of interest that'll add a little excitement to the early part of the meeting. All right, next up would be the planning department report. John Carey usually handles that. I don't know how much you might have on deck of planning items that would be of interest to this committee's focus. Presumably the city council members could also fill on that front. So anything you have, feel free to share it at this time.
Yeah, I have a couple items that I will go through, and then I believe Phoebe might have one or two to report on as well. First off, I will announce that last week at the city council meeting, the planning department delivered the level of service report. That is on the city's website, so it handles all the departments and all the great work that we've done over the last year and reporting that out to our citizens. So that is available for viewing. And also last night at the Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission voted to extend the Saves RV safe parking village at the north end of town for an additional 2 years. That a project was coming up on expiration at the end of this year, and going forward, it has been extended for an additional 2 years, provided there's no appeal that comes in for that project. So those are the two items that I have, and I'll hand it over to Phoebe real quick to add in anything else.
Thank you, John. So my first update is that I'm back. I'm now working as the city's sustainability coordinator part-time. So I'll be in the office usually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but that varies a little bit. And of course, as I'm meeting with the working groups, that can shift around a little bit. So I will put my new email in the chat. That's the best way to reach me if you have any questions or comments, and I'll be reaching out to all of you soon anyways. But just wanted to let you know about that and my schedule. And Carrie wanted me to let you know about the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. It did not make it onto the last council agenda, so it's going to be on the next week's meeting. And I also wanted to make sure everyone looked at the Rcpa greenhouse gas inventory update that was released. Carrie said she sent it out to you all, but just wanted to highlight that. And there's some really significant reductions there. Sebastopol had about a 19% reduction from 2018 to 2020, which is really great. Of course, the pandemic had a part to play in that, especially with the transportation emissions, but want to celebrate that reduction and that good number. So I think that's all I have for my report right now.
Great. Thanks, Phoebe, and welcome back. Thanks for being here. All right. Unless there are any comments or questions on that front, our next item would be the City Council report.
I'm just going to start off, Diana, then I hope you'll go into the items about the homeless situation. First, I want to acknowledge John Jay, who wrote a very detailed level of service report, which I'm sorry got a little bit of short shrift. My apologies, because it came late in a long agenda that got even later. So Woody, apologies to you too, because we missed your item. For all people who are interested, the level of service report is a great snapshot of the previous year, and it's useful for all candidates, council members, and members of the public to be familiar with, to know where we are departmentally, department by department. So Diana, there are a number of items about saves, et cetera. So can you do those for us?
Sure, really
Thanks.
briefly. Thanks. Thanks, Councilmember Gurney. Really briefly, there were two items really. One is that the St. Vincent de Paul, the entity, the nonprofit that owns 845 Gravenstein Highway North, needed a resolution from the City Council supporting their efforts to move forward on an initial step to develop that property as an affordable housing site. So that's the first piece. The City Council did approve that resolution. St. Vincent de Paul's plan is to break ground in 2024. So that's kind of the long-term use, and it was always anticipated, expected that that's what would happen. As a major reminder here, that doesn't mean that their project has been approved. It still has to go through the planning department process and be vetted and all that stuff. But it was just a resolution supporting a funding piece that St. Vincent de Paul needed. The other piece of information is that the ad hoc committee for the unhoused was disbanded effectively by the city council a bit ago. And the follow-up steps are that I was appointed as liaison to agencies supporting the unhoused. So SAVES operating the RV Village, or DEMA operating Elderberry Commons, or our, boots on the ground homeless advocates. And there was a direction to our city manager to appoint a staff liaison to deal with these issues. And I suspect it's landed in the planning department, but John's going, it's landed in my lap. So that's where we are with all of that. For those who are interested, the RV Village has applied, did last night, have a hearing before the planning commission regarding an extension of their permit to an extension of their permission to use the site at 8445 Gravenstein Highway North for the RV Village, to continue to use it for that purpose for 2 years. Obviously, 2024 is when that affordable housing project is expected to move in. I did not attend that meeting. I will not be commenting on that topic because it's likely to come to the city council on appeal, but that's the information that I have. I think those are the key pieces, right?
Well, we also got a very candid report from Adrian from SAVES, mentioning about the RV Village, Horizon Shine, mentioning the difficulties they had. That's where the candor came in with medical issues, health issues, quick resignations, a little bit of strife in the community, and also the successes where people are doing well. So Diana, beyond that, I think we heard from West County Community Services, and they asked for a resolution in support of their application for funding to the county, and the council supported that as well. Just very briefly, Kenna, that's it, I think.
Actually, I will pipe in. I'll put in the link in the chat there. There is now an FAQ on the future of the fire department services, and that might be of interest to everyone here. But series of answers. But I'll put the link in the chat for anyone who's interested. Thanks.
Great, thanks for that, everyone. Just a quick question as a committee member and citizen, while we have so many experts in the room. What's the nature of the project you're getting started on the large lot just to the north of Highway 12 towards the west there? That's where the land's been cleared. I forget if we've heard about that one yet.
That might be a good one for John Jay to answer, but it's the Woodmark Project you're talking about, I think, where you look now and all the apple trees have been cleared across from Robinson. Yeah, John, do you have anything you want to share about that?
So that is the Woodmark Project. It did receive its letter of completeness, I believe, a couple months ago from the planning department and city departments. The demolition portion of it has been underway, and I believe they're finished with that. There was a couple buildings on site that they needed to remove before they moved forward, and then the trees and other things like that to clear out the site. And I believe they're making their way towards the first phasing portion of the project, which will include some frontage improvements and then the site kind of construction overall.
And I'm sorry, the eventual result is multi-family housing or something on that order?
It's an affordable housing project that is getting federal government support. Is it SB 36? John?
B35.
35, yeah, 37. 35, but an affordable housing project. Correct. It will be, when final, made available as rental units. And how many units, John? That might be of interest.
I believe it was 80, it's 84 units. So they'll be doing roughly around 40 in the first phase and then 44 in the remaining phase. So it is a phased project just because of costs and whatnot for construction. So the front half of the site will be done first, and then they'll finish the back half of the site.
And the only thing I'd add from a policy perspective, so that people are aware of it, is that SB 35 is a very affordable housing proactive law that's been in place, and it really limits any discretionary action by cities, like what color of the buildings, what design. Really, it is eliminating barriers to affordable housing projects by limiting the objections or the issues that cities can raise to just kind of objective standards. So that's, people approach me and they say, well, what about this? What about that? Does that capture it accurately, John? Did I?
Yes. So it's essentially subject to whatever we have in place at time concerning building code and zoning regulations. We have in the pipeline, I know council had seen the standard conditions of approval. Those would not be subject to this Woodmark project because the application was in before those guidelines were adopted by the city. But any future projects that come in that SB 35 process will be subject to those conditions and objective standards.
I think that there's lots of archived city council meetings where this has been explained in great detail, that if anybody wants to get this granular about Woodmark and SB 35, I don't think we have to do it in this meeting. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to reach out to me or to Sarah with specific questions about anything, just email us. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Can
Yeah.
I just want to clarify one point? That part of Bodega Avenue is not Highway 12. Highway 12 ends at Main Street. So all of that road is city street.
All right, good to know. So I'm back. Do we have anything else from City Council that pertains to climate action? Okay, thank you. So let's move on to our regular agenda, and that is Woody.
Is this for the legislative update?
You know what got left, unless, Joshua, did you already call for public? You did. Sorry, while I was gone. Yeah, go ahead, Woody. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I have to say is there, this has been one of the sort of nuttiest legislative sessions ever. I think everybody knows, hopefully, that there was a climate package signed at the end of the last session. I think that was talked about last time, I hope. Anyway, the governor did sign a set of 40 climate-related clean transportation, energy-related bills at the end of the last session. And so some really good news on that. But the latest surprise is that last Friday, the governor called for a special session that will start in December 5th on the issue of oil industry price gouging, high gas prices in California, a differential that the analysis shows cannot be accounted for in any other way. So there's a mystery afloat as to why gas prices are so high in California. So it's set to start on December 5th. Details are not really out yet, like what the governor wants to do with it, what the agenda would be or anything like that. So that's still to come. And, for a review of, the work I do on tracking legislation, for a review of that, I would just have to refer you to the Climate Center's website, where we just put up a new bill tracker system. And so you can look at those bills on that system at theclimatecenter.org under our work. I can pop a link into the chat for that. That's really all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Woody. Steve, go ahead.
I wanted to see, Woody, if you have any info on Bill 2316. That's the community solar. From my understanding, it sounds like it passed. And do you have any insight into how this might impact a small town like ours?
Right. So AB 2316 is a community solar bill, and it would make it possible for folks who say you live in an apartment building, you can't put solar on your roof, or you have shade on your single family residence, can't put solar. It would allow, it's really sort of focused mostly on the investor-owned utilities. So in our area, PG&E, PG&E could install a photovoltaic facility somewhere, anywhere in their service territory, which is vast. I didn't love this bill because there's different, you can structure community solar in different ways. To me, community solar means it's somewhere near. You could drive the kids over and point to it and point to the solar array. Hey kids, that's where we get our power from. That's not necessarily the case with AB 2316. The solar panels can be anywhere in California, but you get a bill credit for the power produced. You get a bill. Your solar is your bill is connected to that photovoltaic project. And so it allows for folks that are not able to install solar on their homes to do that. And so, yes, that did get signed by the governor. It's now law. It will go into effect in January. So yeah, I don't know if, and so Sebastopol would be eligible, or people in Sebastopol, just like any city in California.
And could Sonoma Clean Power be the entity?
It's not. There's barely any mention of community choice aggregators in the bill. It's really focused on investor-owned utilities, so it's not a CCA bill per se.
Thanks.
Oh, Kenna.
Yeah, do you see an opportunity within that bill for us to be talking to residents of Sebastopol about this option for them? And is their participation portable if they're moving, like if they don't own their home?
I believe that as long as they stay within the same service territory, if they move within PG&E service territory, they're probably eligible to just remain linked to that solar array wherever it is. And I think, yes, it can go both ways. I mean, communities or groups of people, it doesn't need to be a municipality. It can just be, some grouping of people can make a request to PG&E that, we would like to have a community solar system in our area. We've got X number of subscribers that we've corralled, and there's an opportunity. Can we get it going? So yes, it can go both ways. In fact, that's probably going to be how it rolls out more than any other way. I mean, I think that PG&E will want to develop some, utility scale arrays in their service territory and get subscribers, so it can come from PG&E, especially in what's called distribution circuits where they've got capacity to be able to do that. It matters to a grid operator where you put resources. So if it turns out that Sebastopol has, grid capacity, it could be an opportunity for them. So that's a possibility.
And can those subscribers be Sonoma Clean Power customers, or do they have to not be Sonoma?
I believe that doesn't matter. They can be, CCA customers. There might be a need. I'd have to go back and look. You probably need to. You would opt out. You'd end up opting out of Sonoma Clean Power. So yeah, you could be a Sonoma Clean Power customer. I'm pretty sure that to take up a community solar program through PG&E, you'd need to opt out. So that would hinder you from maybe participating in future Sonoma Clean Power programs. Not all, because some of them they offer to anyone.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have questions for Woody before we move on? If only we knew what to ask you, Woody, we would be full of questions. All right, so we'll move on to, so is this Jerry on the phone? I'm not sure who the caller is, the call-in person, but I guess we will wait until we see Jerry on screen.
It's me.
Oh, that's Sunali.
Sunali.
Hi, Sunali.
Hi.
We can rename you. All right, so we'll move to the working group reports. And I believe, unless Steve, were you going to present for I thought Jerry wanted to present.
I really hadn't planned on it.
Okay.
He revised the document and then I think revised it yet again
Yeah.
after you had probably sent it out.
Yeah, there's been multiple revisions since the version that we all have. So we'll just wait for Jerry. He should be here anytime now.
Okay.
But we'll go on to working group reports. Lisa, did you have something? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Just a little tidbit here. We just got our October article for the Sebastopol Times, just came out a few minutes ago. So it's about, it's called Wondering About Heat Pumps. And so it came out a little late because they were doing a lot of stuff about the election, but just came out.
Can you drop that link in the chat?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so any working groups have our reports? Do we have anything from outreach, education?
I could chime in. This is Sunali with the education and outreach. People's Music was suggested by the Sebastopol Arts Council to host the initial pieces for the community art project, and they agreed to let us use their window while they're clearing out their space until it's rented. So we'll be doing the initial installation in there.
Lisa, is your hand up or is that old? Alex, did you have a question? Or a comment?
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I just had more comments on to share with the education outreach updates. We're still working on a
recording
calendar.
Stopped.
Okay. All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
Are all you hearing that too?
Yes, but we're good to go now. So just keep talking.
Okay. So just a couple quick things. So on the Sebastopol Times piece, Lisa, sorry, I have a friend named Lisa, so I always say Lisa. Lisa, thank you so much. Did you write that article? I believe you did, about the heat pumps. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
She is nodding, yes. And we're also still working on a calendar for the rest of the year for all the different groups and folks that want to write an article. Or the article is 400 words, so don't get too scared. But that should be out. Maybe I'll make some time for the next meeting to share that, and just so we can keep that momentum going and getting that out to the community. And then another update is we're working on. Now that Phoebe's back too, we'll kind of pull her into this. But working on something kind of like a framework workshop. Is what we're calling it now. Essentially, we're going to have some folks from the community, anybody that wants to get involved, kind of start to break down the framework section by section, or category by category, if you will, and just kind of get people involved. It might end up being a funnel to get some people involved in subgroups or working groups, or maybe even potentially getting some people that are really interested to join the Climate Action Committee. I know we have a couple spots maybe coming up, but that's happening. It'll be happening in the next few months. We don't have a date yet, but we were thinking we thought about having it at the library. We may end up switching to the community center. So we'll just keep everybody involved. We'll need a little bit of support when we do some breakout groups during that time. So we need a couple volunteers to come help us, but we'll just keep everybody updated and give everybody plenty of time to put that on their calendars. And those are the outreach education updates that I have.
I think Woody has a question for you.
That's right, I do. It's a question for the outreach education group, which is, this has been lingering for me for a bit. At the celebration, the 120th anniversary Sebastopol celebration, I tabled at that, and in advance of it, I had checked to see if we had like a general sort of Climate Action Committee flyer. We didn't, so I put together one, and also a sign-up sheet for folks that would come to the table and ask for, and ask, let us know they wanted to be engaged. And I got a page of people signing on, and I recall sending that to someone, but I'm not clear that the outreach group ever got that or ever got the draft of the flyer, the handout. So just wanted to know, like, who should I send that stuff to so that you could
Woody, you could send it to me, and what I think might be best is we can put it in the folder that we have already put together for the tabling instructions. So when you go tabling at events, it just tells you all this stuff, how to gather everything. So that would probably be great because you could we could print a couple email listings out, and then you're also asking about who we send emails to that you've already collected.
Well, no, I mean, no, I just want to know who to send what I have to. I did type them up, and so I just want to get them to you so you can, I presume somebody follows up and reaches out to people and says, hey, thanks for stopping by our booth, type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah, so on the email addresses, Woody, if you already have those typed up, you can send those to me and I will send them to Holly so that they get added to the city's climate issues email list.
Okay, I'll send it to both, because I'll send it to both Alex and you, Phoebe.
Okay, great.
Good? Okay, thank you.
Well, Phoebe said what I was going to say, but I'll just add for the Climate Action Committee that we are also getting together a calendar of events with all of our succinct details in place to present to you guys. So when we do that, Kenna will reach out for some time.
Great, thank you. It's very exciting. You guys are doing a lot and moving things forward. So very appreciative of the work. Are there any, Steve, did you have a question for outreach?
Yes, just actually, we need to collaborate with you on the upcoming electrification survey, and that'll involve a lot of outreach. So hoping to set up some meetings going forward. And in that regard, we never really talked about the duration of the survey or anything like that, or how these things work at the council level. Does it end up as a consent calendar item? When can we expect it to kind of get into the pipeline? So those are my questions. Not that that's to the outreach, that's more to staff or council members.
John, do you want to respond to that, or Phoebe?
I am not sure on that process. I think if it is something that needs to go to council, then it would go to the agenda review committee to figure out which item or which next council meeting it would be put on the agenda. But other than that, I'm not too sure on the total process for something like that.
Yeah, I will put that on my list to check in with Carrie about next time we have a check-in.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Joshua?
Yeah, just a quick note that we did have another compost event and it went fine as usual. And thanks to folks who came and helped with that. Again, we're still getting rid of almost 80 cubic yards of compost in the morning, and the leftovers tend to disappear within another day or two. So full steam ahead on that one. The plan is to do 2 events around March or so and 2 events around September or so for fall or spring and fall garden preparation. And so far so good. Dina does have an email list of people who have signed up at those events for further interest. And so I'll be talking to her about to what extent that should be incorporated with the general committee list as well.
Great, thank you. And those compost events are just like the most visible, most popular thing that this committee does. It's totally awesome to see how happy people are to get their compost. All right, any other working groups want to report out on activities in the last couple of weeks, or should we go back to Jerry is here? I see we have readied him for screen sharing. Are you ready to go, Jerry? Okay, Well, let's go back to that. And if anybody, please reach out to me in the chat or, raise your hand when Jerry's done if there's other working groups that want to speak up.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see if I find the right screen to share. Let me see if this is it here. That looks like it.
That
Okay.
looks great. Can you zoom in a little bit more?
Yeah, I can do that in just a second. My screen, it's kind of weird. My screen just totally changed as a result of sharing that. Just a sec. Let me see what I can do here. Give me 1 second. It changed the entire Zoom screen as soon as I did that. Oh, I know what's happening. I had this happen before. It's now sharing on my iPad at the same time.
Yeah, Zoom likes to keep making things work better, which can
Yeah, let me see if I can make this a little bigger here. Oops. Let's go. That help?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. I'll just clarify the things I changed in this. Part of this was we were waiting for staff's input on this. Carrie's not here to speak. Hopefully Phoebe's ready to speak for Carrie and for Steve Brown. Otherwise, I'll speak for both of them. First of all, I kept putting the wrong, I noticed it was July that we first brought this forward, and nobody ever changed the date on it, so I changed the date to October 12th. And all of this is what you've seen before. Woody asked me the other day, could you explain some of this? And let me just summarize what the document basically says. Our recommendation is that Sebastopol will adopt, it's required by law anyway, adopt CalGreen and Tier 1. Now, in order to adopt Tier 1, you have to specifically say in your municipal code that you've adopted CalGreen and Tier 1. In 2019, we took the adoption of CalGreen out of our municipal code. And I presume the reason for that was the 2019 version of CalGreen says this applies to every city. So somebody got bright enough and said, we don't have to say anything about it, so they took it out. Steve Brown has been enforcing CalGreen Tier 1 for any new project in Sebastopol already. I should say enforcing. He really can't enforce it because you actually have to have it in the municipal code in order to enforce it. If somebody came back and said, no, we don't want to do that, that won't work. So that was the first thing that we recommended. The second thing we recommended is that we have specific sections in our code in Title 15. And as Joshua corrected me, chapter number whatever and chapter number whatever, one for energy, one for green building. This follows the pattern that most every other city is doing at this point, that they have a specific chapter, and that those elements that have to do with energy get placed in those placed in the energy place, and those that have to do with green building get placed in green building. Carrie pointed out in the previous meeting, boy, that could be expensive for us to look at all of our code and shove everything in there. You'll see a paragraph on the next page. Let me just scroll down a bit here, because I modified the document a small bit. The first bit was I added this paragraph here. I'm turning the iPad on so the mouse stays where I expect it to be. A second, I'm going to find it. Yeah, okay. One more try. Oh, good. This paragraph right here. Because we had the discussion and we talked about that expense. And my point at that time was having the sections doesn't mean that we have to re-examine our municipal code and repopulate it today. But as we add things and change things, we should move them there. And that would be part of other work. So we don't incur the expense. We have a relatively small budget. We don't want the planning department running around reading through all of the code to find all of the elements. The one part that would be put in there is in the green building portion, we would say we've adopted CalGreen and Tier 1. And so we're able to find that right away. The second thing that's pointed out here is that there's elements in our code, and I was party to some of those elements because of my ignorance, that I don't think we're allowed to have, and staff should review and determine whether we can have those. The first of them is the solar mandate that we have. Unless we file with the CEC, we can't have that mandate, and it can't be imposed. That is, it's not a requirement. So we would have to have that approved at the state level, and that would be a cost for the city and staff. But in Cal Green and in Title 24, in the 2022 legislation, it has a specification that there must be solar, and there's a calculation on how that solar is done. And in our code today, it says you need 2 watts of solar for every square foot of conditioned space. Cal Green has something comparable to that, but then it says, but if you have batteries, then you get this discount. And if you're using all electric, or you have electric appliances, and if you have a heat pump, then you have this. And if you have this kind of installation, you have this. So that is that they reduce the amount of solar required. Now, the reason that they've done that is adding more solar, and we've had meetings now with both PG&E and with Rcpa. And as we add more and more solar, we're creating more and more problems. And we're not solving them unless we also add storage at the same time. And the California code recognizes that. So we should take that part, and I think the specific paragraph is mentioned in here. We also have in our zoning code specifications for EV chargers in high density or multi-family units. That's covered in Title 24 as well. So somebody would need to find out whether we're allowed to do that independently. And I'm not a lawyer, so somebody who is a lawyer needs to look at that and say, yes, we can do that. And if not, those probably need to be replaced also. And by adopting Cal Green, we will be taking care of that. I do believe, if I remember what we have in our code versus what's in the state actually might be more rigorous than ours is. So those are the comments that are made basically here, is take time and make the changes, remove those things which basically we cannot enforce and probably shouldn't be in our code anymore. Then I made a section here for staff's comments and staff's funding estimation. And the reason I did that was they nested it between lines of what the energy team had written. So I never noticed that they had put them in there. And I suggest that in the general format that we use for submissions to the committee, that we have these 2 sections: funding needs as a staff estimate and staff recommendation. Now, the reason I suggest those as well, and this is me suggesting it, nobody else, that when it goes to council, you can see this is what came from the committee. This is what the committee's recommendation is so far. By the way, this is staff's recommendation. In many cases, staff will say, yes, that's what we want to do. In other cases, staff will say, well, we think not. Now, staff did not make any comment on the all electric portion that I had written in here. And if you remember from our meeting in July, I said when I would fill out the form, I would say all electric with the intention that staff would recommend to council that we don't recommend all electric at this time because we think it would cost us more to do that, and the effect would not be that good an effect. And I'm sorry that Steve's not here, Steve Brown's not here to make that point. I remembered that comment from him, and they did not write that into the paperwork. So I put it in there in staff's stead, but Carrie's not even here to nod her head. So I'm on weak ground. That's my summary. My recommendation is, and Steve Pierce is laughing over here, we've talked about all electric, that we believe that Steve Brown's recommendation that we adopt Cal Green Tier 1, that we clean up our code and take out those things which we cannot enforce, is what we should be recommending from the Climate Action Committee. That's my summary. And by the way, that we not insist on all electric. We adopt staff's recommendation that we not have all electric at this time. By the way, also, sorry, a lot of by the ways, very likely in Title 24 and the 2026, we have every expectation that all electric will be required for all new buildings and renovations in the state of California, because major cities, San Jose, San Francisco, Sunnyvale, the fifth largest city in the Bay Area, San Diego, have already adopted this in their municipal codes. And that's where a lot of Title 24 comes from, the impetus that starts with all the various cities adopting. So we wouldn't need to do it, and it saves us some money not doing it. Woody?
Yeah, I just still have a little bit of confusion on, it's like the third paragraph in the, would it be the second page?
Oh,
Where
the
it
second
says-
page? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's third paragraph. It says, this form of the recommendation we are submitting does include the all electric requirement. And then it seems to be self-contradicted in this, in that we are not recommending the all electric. So can you clarify?
Okay, let me clarify. And this has to do with process and rather than documents. The document is submitted to the committee right now. Okay. And the motion that I would expect from the committee is that we send this recommendation to the council with the correction that we not have all electric at this time. And that would be the motion that I would expect. So it has to do with process. Coming from the team is a document. Coming from the committee is a resolution to the council. And that might take the document with amendments. And that would be the amendment. Is that clear, Woody? Did I answer your question?
I mean, not really, but maybe it doesn't matter. I guess now that you're talking about the kind of motion that you would want to see, can you scroll to where, I mean, presumably you've got the staff recommendation there. What's the closest thing you have to what you're looking for in a motion today?
Well, right here,
right
the
there,
motion, yeah, the motion won't be here. Okay, this is a recommendation that we start with, right? And I don't think even in this recommendation that we said all electric, if I remember right, at the time. I added it because during the discussion, people wanted it addressed. And that's why I added it to my write-up, okay? But I believe that this document that Alex came up with is a document for submission to the committee. The document which goes to the council is a motion from us with a recommendation.
And what
I don't think there's a written document that we actually send to the council.
And the page that you're on right now is basically the recommendation.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Ken?
So I know you've talked about this at length, but I feel like Carrie's not here. Many times when we've talked about this code revision, like, there's the kind of clear, or at least in my mind, there's this really clear, like, yes, we're gonna go to Cal Green Tier 1, and then there's this confounding factor of the code of the revisions. And so, like, I see that in your staff recommendation, there's nothing that talks about the code revision.
I know they didn't write anything. We've been waiting 2 months now, and they didn't write any of the comments that they made. Let me clarify, and I'm putting words in Carrie and Steve's mouth. Reviewing our code and moving all of the pieces to these new sections, that means we're going to need maybe a couple of weeks worth of work. This is $15,000. Adding 2 chapters is a simple submission to the council saying we want to add 2 chapters to our municipal code for future use. And by the way, we're going to use it here also for the statement about Cal Green and Tier 1. And that's where we will place that in the green building portion of the code. That would eliminate the high cost. So the cost at this point is simply adding a chapter, or adding 2 chapters and a statement within 1-2 chapters. I do think we need the corrections though. There are pieces in our code which are not enforceable, and staff should take a look at that. Diana?
Yeah, thanks. So it sounds like your proposal from the committee at this point is that we support the addition, recommend the addition of a green building code to the existing ordinance of the city of Sebastopol, and that it be a tier 1 green building code. Is that?
That's right. So this is actually at the state level. This is a very specific statement. Title 24 has chapter, I'm going to get it wrong now, 6 and 11. 6 is energy, 11 is green building code. In 2019, state regulations said that you might have to adopt green, okay? And you actually had to have it in your code. In 2019, they basically came along and said, I'm sorry, every city in California, you have to comply with green. It's not a choice anymore. That was changed to state law. And so it changed in the regulations. That's why it was taken out of our code. If we want to adopt tier 1, which is essentially what Steve is enforcing or trying to enforce, you have to adopt green. And then you also say, and I'm adopting tier 1.
Okay. So thank you, Jerry. When we look at the page that you've displayed there, I can see the first bullet item, adopt the Title 24 Part 11 Tier 1 building standard. The second bullet item, Title 24 Part 6 building standard, you are no longer recommending. Is that correct?
You don't have to adopt, and I'm sorry about that. I don't think, and Steve may make a correction on that. I don't think you have to adopt Title 24 Part 6 building standard. You have to comply with it.
Okay, so you're really looking for us to recommend the adoption of Title 24 Part 11, the Tier 1 building standard.
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
And establishing the chapters in order to put these kinds of specifications. Like Diana, one day I asked a real estate agent, we bought the house here 6 years ago. Oh, you have to take the fireplace out or you have to do blah, blah, blah. Well, we did blah, blah, blah. Well, where is that? And the real estate agents knew that had to be true. I went looking through the code and I'm looking through zoning because that's what I was familiar with, Title 17. Well, it's in Title 15. Now, one of the other reasons for the 2 chapters is organization. And I didn't write that down in the document. But every time I ask a question about these things, they go, oh, wait, that's Steve Brown. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Steve Brown essentially owns and is responsible for Title 15. Harry's responsible for Title 17. Now, the Climate Committee, I don't know where we belong because wait, you got
Steve Brown, cool.
Hey, quick phone call. So Steve's here.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, I put words in your mouth.
Okay, but I do think I understand what you're asking for here, Jerry. It's the adoption of Title 24, Tier 11 as a Sebastopol.
Title 24, Part 11, Tier 1.
Thank you. Okay, as a new Sebastopol Green Building Code.
Right. And we create a chapter where we would put that chapter in, and that would be in Title 15, which the man who's looking back at his books is responsible for.
Okay, thank you.
Phoebe, you raised your hand because you were going to call Steve, right?
No, I was just going to say that my understanding of the situation with moving pieces of the code around was the same as yours. I only had a very brief conversation with Carrie about it, so I don't want to speak for her, but I think, yes, creating the 2 chapters rather than reorganizing everything all at once would be a lower cost.
Yeah, and that's why I put the paragraph into the document saying moving things that we have which are enforceable into these 2 chapters is not something we have to do day one. Things which are not enforceable, we probably should be removing from our code. Steve Brown, I mentioned that the solar mandate that we have is not enforceable and should be removed from our code. I have question, and you're the expert, because of what Title 24 says about electric charging spaces in multifamily. We have that in our zoning code as well. And it brings to question to me whether we should have it in our code or not.
It doesn't really need to be in the zoning code anymore because it is in Title 24 now.
Okay.
I am putting together the adoption for the stuff now for the adoption because we have to do it before January 1st. And I'm adopting all 12 versions of that code and everything that's in them. There are very, very few changes that I see in there that we need at this point. I am putting them all in one section. I know that you'd like to split that out, but if we're going to do that, it needs to be done after January, because if we don't adopt the codes by January 1st, the state adopts them for us. And we're automatically
which section are you putting them in? It would be in Title 15. I wasn't suggesting anything other than Title 15, just two separate chapters.
Yep, we're putting them all in Chapter 15. Or at least that's what I intend to do before January. If we want to move them, we can move them, but
no. Wait, let me be clear. 15 is a title, okay? Below the title are chapters, and all we were recommending is that there be two chapters there in order to give you a place to put those things, because there isn't a place today.
Well, it's all part of Title 24, though, so it's all part of the code. So
no, I mean inside our municipal code.
But if they all go into any section of Chapter 15, and I don't have it in front of me right now, and I apologize, but if they all go into Chapter 15, we can move those around in the Muni Code all we want.
Yeah, that's fine.
The adoption we're doing now is just to take care of not having the state adopt codes for us without any changes. And we do have a number of changes in the fire area, but not so many in the building area.
By the way, one of the things, just make a comment, I did check with staff because, and Joshua caught me on part of this. What's a title? What's a chapter? What's a part? What's a section? And it turns out the nomenclature at the state level is different than nomenclature at the municipal level.
Right.
And I couldn't find anybody in our city who knew what the nomenclature was. And Carrie admitted to me that she didn't know either.
It is different. I do know what the nomenclature is for the state, but for the city, it is a little different. So for the state, Title 24 is the entirety of the building codes and the fire codes included in that. And then they're broken down into 12 parts, of which we're going to adopt them all and in their entirety. So that'll mean we will have the full green building code to work from here on out.
Okay, good. Diana?
Yeah, thanks, Steve, for being here. I had a question. As you think about what you already have planned, you can see up on the screen there what's being put forward here at the Climate Action Committee is a suggestion that we request the City Council specifically adopt Title 24, Part 11, the Tier 1 building standard. Is that already something that you are planning as part of what you already have underway? Because if so, I'm wondering whether there's actually any action that we need to take.
Well, I have to tell you from a legal point of view, Steve can't change the municipal code on his own.
Jerry, so Steve,
thank you for that. I don't want to.
Right. Okay, but you're already adopting, you're already doing something in our code in compliance with the requirement that the green building code be incorporated.
Absolutely. That will be in front of your city council body. I believe it's in talking to Mary, we're looking at the first meeting in November and the second meeting in November to introduce and adopt the ordinance.
Yeah, I just want to be clear, Dana, we're not recommending that they do something different than what they basically were planning on doing. we are recommending that some other cleanup be done at the same time, and I think Steve would be sign up for that as well. We can't enforce the solar mandate we have. I mean, unless he files something else.
Okay, so I have to say that I'm completely confused at this point, to be
Oh,
absolutely blunt. I hear Steve saying that he's going to bring a proposal to the city council for approval in order to incorporate these green building code requirements that are required by the state. I am hearing from you, Jerry, two things. One, initially, I thought you were simply asking that we ask the city council to make the implementation in our town of a tier 1 building standard.
and that is what Steve's doing.
And that, okay, he's doing that anyway. And in terms of making changes in the code to clean things up, I thought I was hearing you say that that really wasn't something that we should be directing the city council to decide on.
No, two separate things.
Okay.
One is there is a recommendation from us that those things which are not enforceable in our code should be removed. And the council would actually have to say, we want to remove these things from our code. But I'm sure there was a discussion years ago on the solar mandate. Now you need to remove the solar mandate. That's in 1572. Okay, that's something you have to act on. Staff would bring it to you. The recommendation from the committee isn't something that you immediately do. You can turn to staff and say, okay, now tell us what we should be doing. But in the end, from a legal point of view, staff's not allowed, as far as I know, to go change the municipal code. That's the city council.
No, I understand that. What I'm trying to determine is what maybe everyone else understands, but I'm really unclear on what you're proposing.
Okay.
For us to do.
Can somebody else help? Does everybody else understand?
Jerry, I think it would be helpful if I understand your drive to tie these things together, but I think it would be helpful for just a messaging and clarity standpoint to separate out, do we want to recommend adoption of tier 1? I feel like that's already gotten out. And I think what Diana is saying is, it seems like tier 1 has already gotten out ahead of this committee. I know Carrie's put it in some things that are coming that we're moving forward. It looks like Steve is already working on it. So it sounds like there's one question, which is, do we even need to recommend tier 1 at this point? Is this a meaningful action? And then separate that from this code update issue a little bit. Just give us a minute to talk about tier 1. Is that a meaningful thing for this committee to recommend?
Yeah, I mean, look at our role in the community is to work on the environmental issues. We started the study work in January on this. That's how we found out that we had a municipal code that actually wasn't enforceable. Now, in discussions with Steve, we found out, but we're telling everybody you have to do this. But if somebody came back to Steve and said, I don't want to, they didn't have to, basically.
Oh, Jerry, we know that. It's that
Okay.
but now that things are already in motion,
Kenna, what is the problem with taking what we originally sent forward as a recommendation to the council? The recommendation, staff will turn around. This happens all the time. When I've worked in other committees and commissions, we'll send a recommendation to council. Staff will turn around and say, yeah, we want to do that. Or they'll say, no, let's change it. Let's not have all electric. Well, staff came back and said, let's not have all electric. So in the process, then we would come along and say, we agree. Staff gave us their recommendation. It sounds like a reasonable thing. And so we're recommending this to the council. Essentially, council will then have a recommendation from the committee to do things that staff thinks ought to be done. So it's a voice.
And if I can interject here, I will tell you that in listening to all of you about some certain things, we've had tier 1 for a number of years, but there were exceptions that we took out of tier 1. In listening to all of you, this year I'm recommending that we adopt tier 1 in its entirety, because that seemed to be the direction this committee wanted to go in. There are some changes, and you'll see this, I will have it out within the next few days. There are some amendments that we are proposing stay in our code books. There are some amendments in our codes now that I'm recommending we take out, and that'll all come forward. But a lot of it, those things are based on what all of you have given me as input. And I will tell you, Jerry and I have talked a number of times about this at length at times. And most of the stuff I think you're looking for is coming here as an amendment, or in the case of the 3 watt thing, it's been removed. That will be the recommendation that goes to council from me, obviously.
So Ken, just from my point of view, having worked on these kinds of things in cities before, we are a voice. I mean, if you look at our charter, we can't decide anything. All we can do is recommend. So at this point, we put a recommendation together. It's going to be the same as staff's recommendation. And it's a voice. It should be a very strong voice, I hope, to the council, that we would concur with staff on these things. And we came to a compromise. We walked into Steve's office saying, we're doing all electric. And Steve goes, well, this is the amount of work that's going to be incurred. And let's go look at this over here and see how much of a difference it'll make. And it wasn't enough of a difference. So that's why I think the process worked. And I actually like the document that we used to start with, because it gave staff a chance to pipe in before it ever went to the city council, which I think was a mistake in the way we did things before. So I think the process is working correctly, but I do still think that we should send a recommendation to the staff, to council. What do you want to jump in?
Maybe I want to. I'm not sure I want to. Anyway, I mean, look, I totally get the value of cleaning up the books, getting consistency in there. Either removing stuff that's not enforceable, or figuring out some other way because it's good stuff. Make it enforceable. All that I understand that, combining, getting things more clearly established in the code. The question I have, and everything I'm seeing, I mean, that seems to me the purpose of our climate action committee and what we would want to be doing relative to the code, building code, is pushing the envelope on climate action. And I can see how, again, I can see how all of the things that are proposed here help, but I'm not seeing, like pushing the envelope. How does this go about? Most of it appears to be, lining up with existing state standards or state, highest standards. It does not separate out Sebastopol as a city that's leading on anything. So that's my observation. And if I'm incorrect on that, point
You're
to
correct.
me.
You're correct. You're pretty much correct about it. And not everybody has adopted tier 1. The difference between tier 1 and Cal Green, according to the write-ups that I've read, you have a 50% decrease in greenhouse gases as a result of complying with tier 1. Other cities don't have to comply with tier 1. They won't make any mention about Cal Green whatsoever in their municipal code. So we're not radically different, okay?
Yeah, it's Sebastopol stepping up and basically aligning itself with the highest standards that the state is putting out there. That's how you would characterize it.
That's the way I would put it. And then also from the study that we did, we'll find out we will achieve everything if we stuck our neck a little further out. If we stick our neck out a little further, and here's the practical portion, I discussed about it. Sebastopol has a $10 million budget, maybe $12 million if we're really lucky. Do we want staff to go spend time on something where a lot of larger cities are doing it already and will make the change occur? You and I discussed this. The reason I joined the committee in the first place was I wanted to look for things that we could do in Sebastopol that a small city could do that nobody had thought of before, and we did it. Gas was a really good one. There'll be others that we'll find along the way. In this particular area, if we jumped in with all electric at this point, other cities will have the same kind of cost hit as we have, and yet it's going to happen at the state level. I was involved years ago with the no plastic bag ban. Sunnyvale got sued. Sunnyvale has a $200 million
Jerry,
budget.
I just want to make sure you're watching the time.
Okay, fine. Anyway, so that's why I would still argue that we do, I'll even make the motion if I have to, make a motion to adopt this and send a recommendation to the council so they have it. Diana.
One of the things that I could add real quick.
Yeah.
When I was going through the amendments that we had to this code 3 years ago and comparing them to the newest code that came out, at least a third of the amendments we had 3 years ago were now word for word in the state code. So those amendments I just took out. I mean, we talked about all electric. I think we're a little early on that, but it won't be very many years until the state will be all electric anyway, and we won't have to do that. So the state's not too far behind because the state is all of us submitting these code changes to them of what's on the leading edge of energy conservation and so on. So anyway.
Diana?
Yeah, I had a question for Steve. Steve, when will you be bringing your action before the city council? Is it on the forward agenda?
I think Mary has it on there. She and I talked about it last week, and we talked about dates of November, the first and second meetings of November, but she cautioned me that it may be pushed to the second meeting of November and what I assume will be the only meeting of December.
And it's time sensitive, Diana.
I'm sorry?
It's time sensitive because
So my thought was, it seems like, I agree, I now understand that the Climate Action Committee has the opportunity for a voice here. It seems there's been a discussion that actually indicates that through the actions of the task force, the working group, there's been real support and understanding from staff. My suggestion would be one of two things. Either the Climate Action Committee submits a letter of support, in essence provides staff with a formal confirmation of what the Climate Action Committee's position is on this issue, which would be tier 1 and could in fact incorporate the other more aspirational long-term goals that Woody was talking about. So either it's a formal request to staff, or if it has to be an action from the Climate Action Committee directly to the City Council, I'd strongly recommend that it be aligned to be heard on exactly the same day when Steve Brown's issue is being heard. It then becomes a uniform voice before the City Council. So just a suggestion if that works for people. Thank you.
And if you want to change things in January or February or March, we can still make amendments to the code. It just has to go through the ordinance process, 2 meetings, and it can be changed. But at least we will, sometime in late November, early December, we will have the bulk of all of these codes adopted, so we have a starting point. And like I said, I've heard a lot of the input that's come out of this committee through Carrie and through Jerry. I think there's a lot of it in there that you're going to see when we move forward with it that'll be pleasing, hopefully.
Joshua.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to honor and remind everybody that we've been talking about this subject for a long while, not today, but over the course of the year, and that the original approach to reach codes was a really kind of a big shot. It was kind of a pie in the sky, sort of all the things that might be recommended. And I want to really compliment the working group on the degree of diligence that they've done and dialoguing with and responding to staff. And I feel that the most important part that Steve's ideas and Jerry's ideas and the other people who have supported all that process have come together and have really aligned. And my feeling is, not being an expert on this subject, that this proposal has come to a really reasonable place where it can dovetail with what's happening in the city process. that has been through a lot of this work behind the scenes, and that I think as a committee, we should just go ahead and move it along if we can. I'm happy to put that in a motion, but I'm feeling that what's proposed here is really pretty moderate. And so I'd just like to keep going.
Hey, Joshua, make a motion.
Yes, please, because we have 15 minutes to pull this over the finish line and finish our discussion.
I make a motion that the committee approve the Energy Working Group's proposal to formalize the adoption of Title 24 Tier 1, recommend the removal of the potentially conflicting solar mandate, and provide space in future building code updates for the further organization and collation of these related subjects as stated in this, and further that the presentation of that to City Council be dovetailed with Steve Brown's ongoing work.
I second that motion.
Did you take notes on your own motion there?
I think I could say that again if I had to.
Okay, write it down.
And Joshua, the only thing I would want to make sure that you have covered in that as well was there's in the write-up, it talks about all electric, but that we agree with staff that all electric is not called for at this time.
I personally, I'm comfortable with your document aside from a couple of trivial typos.
No, but the document, the way it was left, says that we were recommending all electric, and staff says we should have all electric, that we amend our document so that it does not recommend all electric.
Thank you. Let us amend any conflicting lines in that document.
All right. So keeping in mind that, as Joshua pointed out, we have been discussing this for many months. Is there any further discussion among committee members or members of the public or staff before we move to a vote? Please raise your hand because I can't see the whole gallery right now. Okay, I don't see any hands. Jerry, do you want to take off your screen share so that we
can I'm sorry about that.
For the vote, please.
Just a second. I didn't realize that was the reason you couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Don't you have two screens?
No,
there's always two. No, there's always another window hidden behind there.
No.
Go up. I'll show you someday. It's always there.
I know it's just like, it's hard to manage on my little screen. So I have not seen any hands go up. This is your last chance to say that you want to discuss. John, go ahead.
Yeah, Ken, before you get to the vote, Lisa, since you did make a second on the motion, are you okay with the amendments as mentioned?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, so we will proceed to
a vote. I actually understand how this works.
All in favor of adopting the motion, raise your virtual hand, please. Or your non-virtual hand if your virtual hand is stuck.
Okay, but Sarah doesn't get to be counted twice.
All right, John, let me know when your hand is going up and down and up and down.
Is it up or down?
It's up. I'm sorry. I looked up and it wasn't up and I had put it up and anyway, sorry.
Okay. I have
and Sunali,
11.
if you don't have a hand, do you want to give a vote in favor or against by voice?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have 11 votes in favor and then 1 abstention from Sunali.
Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you all. You can lower your hands. And congratulations, Energy Group, for this incredibly heavy, long lift. This was like an ultra marathon or something. And you guys brought us to the finish line. Thank you so much. Very exciting. And hopefully we can move this, John and Phoebe will move this forward in a way that will dovetail with Steve's presentation to council. Let's hope, and we'll all show up to voice our support. Okay, moving on. Are there any other working groups who have anything to say. I know that Joshua would like a little time to talk about the work plan. So if there's nothing urgent, we'll just go on to the chair reports, and I'm going to turn over to Joshua.
Great, thank you, Kenna. So I'm just going to cover this quickly. It is in a certain sense a recap of things we discussed previously, and also a proposal that I have already emailed to everybody on the committee in terms of a revision from our previous proposal. We had been hoping to, at our next regularly scheduled meeting 2 weeks from today, do our work plan creation session, which again was intended to be a little bit longer and in person so that we can really hammer out a good work plan for the seasons ahead. However, Carrie not being available today, she was going to be talking to us about the formal work plan process that she's gone through with the Planning Commission, how that fits into the city process. And also Phoebe just getting back this week, she's going to be meeting with the working groups on the side to prepare the working group input, such that when we get to that work plan meeting, it will be very smooth and it will be really clear, and we can just take our various ducks and line them up and have something that we all feel good about. Absent those two things, we are now proposing to push back the work plan meeting one regularly scheduled meeting interval, which is to say not October 26th, but November 9th. Let me just get to my page calendar. Yes, so we're talking about November 9th, again, the regularly scheduled Wednesday afternoon. My proposal, aside from it being in person, is that we extend the time somewhat, that we go rather from 3:30 to 5, instead from 3 to 5:30, with a little break in the middle and hopefully some snacks and beverages and that sort of thing, just to keep our spirits up. And so my hope is that will sort of work for everybody. I hadn't had any objections to the previous iteration of the proposal, so I'm hoping that pushing it back a couple of weeks will not be a big deal for anybody. So let me pause there and say, of the folks who are here today, does anyone have concerns or objections to that proposal? Jerry?
I don't object to that. I just won't be there.
Okay. Do you feel comfortable going through the working group process?
Yeah, no, that's fine. In fact, Steve, Lisa, and I outlined the things that we believe that we should be working on in the next year.
Great.
So I think that's what be discussed, and if Phoebe's talking to us ahead of time, that should work out fine.
Okay, so it sounds like you're comfortable being absent, although you can't make that date. Great, thank you. So going forward, presuming that that's going to work for everybody, again, each of the working groups will be meeting with Phoebe on the side. Presumably at our next meeting 2 weeks from today, we can have further input from Carrie on the city's view on the formalized work plans. Now looking at the calendar for November, I noticed that our regular second and fourth Wednesdays, the second Wednesday, again, the 9th, we're talking about doing the work plan meeting. The fourth Wednesday happens to fall on the 23rd, the Wednesday right before Thanksgiving. I noticed that, a lot of people are already starting their holiday at that point. I would like to propose, just while we're scheduling out November, that we push that meeting from the 23rd back to the 30th. It so happens that November has 5 Wednesdays in it. So generally we would have had a 3-week gap after that meeting on the 23rd. This would give us a 3-week gap in between our work plan meeting and then our next meeting on the 30th. And there would still be a 2-week gap between that 5th Wednesday meeting in November and our second Wednesday meeting in December. So I think it makes for a pretty smooth schedule. So is John?
Yeah, that the 23rd is a city holiday anyway, so we would be off. So I think that works out even better.
Great. Diana?
I just want to make sure I understand. November 29 would be our work plan meeting and November 30 would be a regular meeting?
No, November 9th would be our work plan meeting.
Okay, November 9th. Thank you.
Second Wednesday. Yeah, we're sticking with the regularly scheduled Wednesday afternoon. Okay. We would just be lengthening the duration a little bit on the 9th, just to give us a little more time for this important task, and so that we can hopefully get it all done in one meeting.
Works for me. Thank you.
Great. All right. I think that's it in terms of the business on that subject, unless anybody has questions. Again, I have sort of put all of this in an email thread, including copying all the people who are not here today. So there's time in that if anybody wants to respond to me with more feedback or concerns, and the logistics about the venue and potential snacks and that sort of thing we can handle next time. So that's all I've got. Thank you all.
Thank you, Joshua. That was very efficiently handled. So now we are in the situation where we have a meeting in 2 weeks that has no planned agenda items because the planned agenda has been pushed back. So jump in now and claim some time. Phoebe, claim some time.
Yeah, so I am hoping to have a discussion with the committee about what criteria we want to evaluate in prioritizing the framework action items. And it'd be great to have that discussion as a whole group before we move into the working groups doing their own prioritization. So we're all looking at the same criteria and making those decisions.
Great, thank you, Joshua.
Just in tandem with that, hopefully we can get Carrie to do her presentation and discussion of the work plan process from the city standpoint.
Great, Jerry?
Well, since I won't be in the meeting, and it's not in the work plan for the Energy Task Group, but I believe it's something that should be across the board for the committee, I would like to suggest that in the work plan, we include work on key climate indicators for the city. And I don't think that would fall into any one of our groups. And yet measuring what we do and the progress that we're making is probably the most important thing in order to be successful.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have anything that they would like to see on the agenda for our next committee meeting? It's a good opportunity. Phoebe's your hand up again, or is it just legacy? All right. And I know Ambrosia, I know you were here. I believe Zero Waste met. I'm hoping that maybe next time we can get a little update from Zero Waste. Would that work for you? Great. All right, so let's just do a review of action items and we'll all go home or stay home.
Yeah, the action items are mostly about things to check out. It was pointed out that the Rcpa greenhouse gas inventory report is up, and that's the sort of thing that should be reviewed as we go into our work plan meeting process. The working groups work planning with Phoebe is mentioned and is in process. The meeting itself moving has been mentioned and is echoed in an email. And just finally, that note that Phoebe is sort of acting as a receiver of email addresses of people who are interested in our work for further contact, and she can pass that through to Holly in the city channel. So if anybody has emails that they've collected from various events, we can start sending those to Phoebe for, collation.
Thank you. Diana?
Yeah, I'm sorry, very quickly, did anyone, Joshua or Kenna, have either of you responded to the request for compost that came through to the Climate Action Committee mailbox?
Which one was that?
It was for a lot of compost from, it was a JC.
We can I'll follow up with Joshua.
I'll follow up, yeah, I'll email you, thank you.
All right, thank you. So before we adjourn, I will just say, I know that, sometimes reading things like Rcpa reports can be a little bit like sleep inducing or just overwhelming. So if anyone is interested in getting together, as long as we get together in kind of less than quorum numbers, we could, have a couple of evenings where people get together. I'm happy to host and just read through that and talk through, what are we learning from this information, as long as, we're staying within Brown Act guidelines. So happy to do that. Please reach out if you'd be interested. I would love to have a reading buddy. So, and with that, I believe, unless someone has something else important, I don't see anyone jumping up and down, I will adjourn this meeting until our October 26th meeting, which will now happen at the regular time, 3:30 on Zoom, not in person. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kenna. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
So John,